So unless you go first, you have to, Kaboogie, we could ask him. I mean, you're so good at it.
John's going to, yes,
They could probably do it without any of us.
Now we're good.
No, we can't do exception.
And Cheyenne joins us from India. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everybody.
It's 80-something degrees there, he told me.
hours difference.
Dedication.
Good morning. All right. So we concluded the executive session. We're back to vote on 903 capital improvements for $700,000 a year. Do a motion.
So moved.
Second? Chris, did you actually have more comments you wanted to make in public, or was that just a?
We're good.
Okay.
All right. So we'll go with, Cheyenne is going to abstain because he wasn't there for
So,
that.
point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So this is the first time that we're presenting this for the end game in public. You might want just a quick subcommittee report, vote on the MIS budget.
I think we presented it last week. We had the full presentation, but
And you got the subcommittee report?
But maybe
But
for
we
the people
can-
who are
we can
watching,
wrap.
you could,
we can wrap.
the 30-second version.
Would you give the 30-second version, Steve?
Sure. The subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor. This particular warrant article is replacing some end-of-life equipment in both the school side and the town side. And it's also adding incremental improvements to perform network monitoring on a real-time basis that we felt as a committee was important. The phone also has the potential of offering some additional safety equipment that makes it easy for the person to get in touch with the police department if needed. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. Chris Campbell,
Yes.
Chris Delaney,
Yes.
Mike Hardy,
Yes.
John Eiler,
Yes.
Deb McCarthy,
Yes.
Frank Monaco.
Yes.
Steve Moran,
Yes.
Rob Newfield,
Yes.
Paul Noonan,
Yes.
Ed Parsons.
Yes.
Roger Riggs,
Yes.
David Tate,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that is 1201. So,
Thanks
thank
to
you.
Jose
Thanks-
and Joe.
Yeah, thanks to Jose and Joe. You guys were,
Nice job, guys.
you spent lots of hours with us, and we appreciate it. Lots of emails. Thanks to the ISACs guys that took another night.
We'll get together some other time.
Thanks, Bob.
You gotta give me your badge number in the DTA.
117.
Chief?
Wow, 1666097.
So we're moving ahead into some of the warrant articles because we can fill the space, and we need to get as many in as we can. The chief had already met with the Public Safety Subcommittee, and they reviewed these two warrant articles, so we're going to review them tonight.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before I begin, I'd just like to pass out some extra
Please.
backup that should have been included. My apologies that it was not at the beginning, but if you just take one and pass it around, this will help you understand where we're going with one part of this article.
I was wondering.
Give me one of them.
Yeah.
My son doesn't want this on my sleep.
Okay to begin, or do you want me to wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one that's before you, referring to the rifle and the less lethal weapon replacement. So the photo that's going around is the current less lethal weapon, and I'll explain that after I do the rifles. But basically, we're before you, or I'm before you today, to ask for this warrant to replace our fleet of 29 rifles, as well as the 6 less lethal launchers that you're seeing there as they're passed around. So to give you a little bit of history, each one of our line cruisers and the support cars carry a long rifle in the car, an AR-15. We've been carrying them in the car since 2002. The useful life on one of these rifles is measured by the amount of rounds that are fired through the rifle. So the manufacturer's useful life is anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 rounds through that system. The rifles that we're carrying now on the shorter end, the most recent, 35,000 to upwards of 80,000 rounds that have gone through these rifles. So what we've done since 2002, as we've added line cars, we've gone out and bought the rifles as part of our regular budget. Some of the rifles that have fallen into deep disrepair, we've been able to replace component parts, but we're at the point now they're just beyond useful life. So we shoot these rifles quite a bit. Just for instance, in the fall, every time we do our fall retrainer, each one of those rifles is seeing anywhere from 400 to 600 rounds of ammunition that go through them. The problem is, after about 10,000 rounds, the rifles, by manufacturer's specs alone, start to lose their accuracy. So as you can imagine, the more and more rounds that are going through these, all the heat and the explosion that's building up in there, the rifles become less accurate. But what's more a problem is we're shooting those in less than ideal conditions. We're going into prone conditions, we're shooting out of the dirt, we're in the grass, we're shooting over barricades, and what happens is the guns get dirty. Pieces of sand will get into the components, and it just wears out the components. So it isn't just the rifle, the barrel part of it, it's the whole component. If you drop a magazine into the sand, then you pick that magazine up as you're doing active firing drills, you're jamming that magazine into the well, you're introducing sand into the components. So year over year, we're seeing higher maintenance costs. The gas rings on the bolts is starting to go, the bolt mechanism itself, there's muzzle damage, and it's just overall wear and tear. So we're at the point that we need to replace them. So one of the questions that I would anticipate is, well, why are we waiting? Why are we coming before you at this point? Why don't we try to move these into the operating budget? The problem is, as technology goes along, the guns get better and better each time, right? So when we try to do training with all our officers, we want to train all of them on the same weapon system. If I start to put into the operating budget to replace 3, 4, or 5 a year, what's going to happen is you potentially are mixing models in there. So when you go to train, you're not training as a single focused training mission, right? So if you have an officer that gets into a different car and that rifle is changed, there's a possibility that the training isn't the same. So we try to keep it simple, and that's why we're coming to you with this big purchase. That's the piece on the rifles. If anybody has any questions, certainly can take them, or I can move on to the less lethal and take questions at the end.
Press on. Oh, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
We can do it.
Do it at the end? Okay. So as part of this also is the less lethal. So you have the picture in front of you. Those are our less lethal weapons. I would think that probably all of you agree it's a very intimidating weapon system. That weapon is brought out as part of our de-escalation under the use of force. We have had occasion to have to deploy these on people. We've had an individual that has been affected by this weapon system. And in that photo, you'll see on the left, as you're looking at it, there is a round with a silver casing, and then there is a one with a blue casing and the yellow projectile. The yellow projectile is a plastic projectile, and that is the training round. If we were to deploy this in the field, the weapon system would shoot that one to the left that looks like a volleyball. I'm sorry, a racquetball. We had 2 of these in the cars way back in probably 2004. And now, because of de-escalation efforts in post and what you're seeing every day on the police side about, everything that's going on in the country with the police, this weapon system serves many purposes, and one of the biggest ones for us is the de-escalation factor. If we pull up to a scene where it's potentially volatile, you don't want to just be armed with a handgun or a rifle to go in. You want to have different tools at your disposal to be able to go in and de-escalate that situation. This weapon is one of the best ones we have to do so. We've deployed them on suicidal situations, barricaded subjects, warrants, dangerous warrants, and it just it increases our ability to safely command and secure a scene rather than going to deadly force. So What's happened is these are used as much as the rifle, and what happens is the components start to break down. We had 2 of them that we need to replace. They just are not able to be repaired anymore. And we also see the advantage to bring more into the line cars, so that's why we're asking for 6 of them. 2 will be replacements, and 4 more will be added into the line so that they are readily deployed on all the shifts. So again, happy to take any questions on any of those.
Questions? Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, you explained about how these weapons are, sounds like they're overused. Is there any danger to the officer firing these weapons with that much usage?
No, so there's no danger to them, but what we are finding consistently is as we go to the range, it used to be you could run these guns all day, and they wouldn't malfunction until the end of the day or after lunch. What we're finding now is they malfunction on the first round of fire. So there's not a danger that anything's going to kick back, but it's just, it could be a danger out on the road if that weapon malfunctions. So the malfunction is the bigger problem.
Chris?
Where we're talking about the difference between a lethal weapon and then other weapons that are used in other situations, do you just want to mention quickly the training that your officers go when they show up to a scene, assess the situation, and trying to figure that out before then reacting with such weapons? Because I know you guys go through extensive training, but just for ours, how your officers go through that too, assessing those before deciding what weapon needs to be brought out to a situation?
Sure. So we go through use of force training a couple of times a year, but we're always doing training, whether it's roll call training, live training, et cetera. So it all starts with dispatch, whoever the call taker is, getting as much information as possible. So what we've done over the past couple of years is implemented a policy that every single cruiser is equipped with certain things, like the long rifle. However, like the less lethal, there are certain cars that are going to carry them. Maybe not every car out on the road has it, but we also have ballistic shields out there. We have breaching kits to get indoors. So what happens is at the beginning of every shift, every officer who's assigned to a line cruiser is going to call in or let the OIC and dispatch know what tools they have available to them. So as these calls are coming in, the OIC, the officer in charge, is aware of what every single cruiser has, and as they're getting that information, they're deploying those different resources to those sites. So, for instance, if you had a person that's armed with a knife, maybe they're suicidal, they're having a bad day, what we're going to try to immediately do is get the shields in there, because if we have to get close, those shields are going to help us, but we're also going to deploy one of these less lethal so that we're not pinned down into going into the firearm. Does that help answer your question? And we do that across the shifts.
Can you just talk about how many cruisers we have in total versus how many are going to be deployed with the less lethal?
So we have 13, I believe, line cruisers. There will be 6 that are deployed in the cars, and the ones that are out the most often, so they're running 16 hours a day. I don't have the exact numbers, but they're between car 42 and 49. And then one of the supervisor's cars, the supervisor is 41. He or she would have a system in there as well. So we always have at least 2, minimum 2, on every shift, but hopefully more.
Sure.
Do you expect or see maybe having the less lethal weapon as, as it goes on, and if you do see that as a usage, as a deployment?
We would like to eventually have them in every car. What we have started to do, it used to be only a core group of officers, a certain number that we would train every year. We now train everybody with the hope that this will be an option in every single cruiser that's out there, even mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. With that in mind, why only 6?
So, as I've come before you many times, I try to be conservative in the budget. I try not to ask for too much. Everybody's been gracious with the station and everything else. We can get by with what we have right now with the plan to eventually, work it out to be more. But this is manageable for us at this point.
Great, all right, thank you.
Motion? We do them one at a time.
Was there a subcommittee?
Oh, sorry.
Yep,
Terrible about that. Subcommittee report.
you were part of this, too.
I was there.
Subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor.
Sorry, one more question.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is the 60,000 we're talking about?
Well, we'll do both, so
Well, the AEDs are a separate item.
right. So the first one will be 60.
So just to clarify, so the less lethal is $5,659.55?
The total is 32,000. It's that times,
Got it.
6.
Just that times 6.
yeah.
That's what I was missing.
So look, can I have a motion on Article 4.1, which is rifle replacement for $60,000?
Sure, move to approve.
Second.
So let's vote. Cheyenne?
I vote yes on this.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Newfeld?
Yes.
Paul Noonan?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. 1400. Can I have a motion for Article 4-2 for the AED
Can we discuss that one?
replacement? Yes?
We haven't discussed it yet.
I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can the chief tell us a
Separate
little bit
article.
about?
I'm happy to take the yeses, though.
Go
We'll
ahead.
get there, don't rush.
So the next one before you is for the automatic or automated external defibrillators. So I don't know if, most people are familiar with them. If you're not, they're carried in 20 of our cruisers right now, and what they are is the first line of a rescue in any CPR type of situation. So we've been carrying them in the cruisers since around 2003. We were fortunate enough to get them on a grant through Zoll Medical that, used to be in town. The model that we carry now, the useful life on it is 5 years for the batteries as well as the pads. But because we had the relationship with Zoll Medical, as the units became closer to useful life, we could just send a detective who handled them. He would go over to Zoll, they would update the software, give us the new pads, and send them back. But we're at the point now where they won't support those models anymore. So we need to look into a better system, basically. So what we're asking for right now is to replace 14 of the AEDs that are currently in the cars right now. So those would be the line cars that you see out on patrol, the traffic cars, and some of the detective cars. And also, one of them in this cost would be the training model, because we'd have to obviously do new training. So the newer model is going to give us a lot more bang for our buck, so to speak. It's a Stryker Life Pack. CR2 is the name of it. It comes with an 8-year warranty. It's simple connection to the patient. So the pad system, if you're familiar with it, as soon as we get to a CPR situation, 911's obviously activated. We're there. We get there. We assess the patient. The first thing we do is we're going to put these pads on the patient. The models that we carry right now, the pads are a little more difficult to put on because they're connected in the middle. So if you had a person that's really overweight or really young and they're small, you've got to take the time to disconnect them. If you've never been in a situation where you're giving somebody CPR, it's very high stress, and you're going to lose the fine motor skills in your hands. These pads on this system are much more simpler. They're going to be easier to connect. They are also going to allow, once they're hooked up to the patient, if the fire department or ALS unit comes in, all they've got to do is unplug our pads from the system and plug it into their own unit. They're going to transfer. As a result of that, the data will also transfer from this unit right to the hospital and the emergency room doctor. So they're going to see real-time what was going on in the field and be able to assess a better medical plan for the patient when they get there. These systems also allow us a child function. Unfortunately, we've had situations where we've responded to medical emergencies with children. The current system that we use, you have to remember to put the pads on the front, chest, in the back of the child. And again, when you're in that situation, especially when it's a child, you may not necessarily be thinking, fine-tuned. So what this will do is allows us to just switch a button right on the front of the unit, and it will attenuate the amount of electricity that's going through that patient. That's a huge improvement in the system that we have. The lifespan of these batteries is going to be 800 minutes if we left it on, and then, or 166 discharges to a patient. And what they also do is they do a daily automatic self-test with software updates as soon as they hit an internet connection. And the nice thing is because of our body-worn cameras, all of the cruisers have that function. So as soon as that system goes into the car and it's turned on for the day, it's going to update. So if there are any software problems, we don't have to worry about taking it out of service and bringing it to the vendor. It's going to be done right there. So any questions, I'm happy to take them. I think I've covered everything.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was just curious, how often have the police actually used AEDs?
Unfortunately, it's a pretty high number. I don't have an exact number for you, but when they are used, what happens is that unit automatically comes out of service. It goes into a queue for the medical officer to take care of and refurbish it, get it back to patrol, and we take a spare and put it in the car. So we're constantly getting those emails. Unfortunately, it happens more than you'd think. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, Cheyenne?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is ease of use in the software updates, is that why we switched from the Zoll to the Stryker system?
So ease of use would be one thing, but the problem, the main reason is we're basically, we've run out of support for the Zoll system. So as they start to, need the updates, we don't have anywhere where we can get them updated anymore. So they've just kind of become dinosaurs.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a quick question. How many currently AEDs do you have?
Right now, we have 23. That's 20 inside the cruisers and then 3 spares that we keep in the station, one in booking. But we'd be looking for 14 at this point. Again, not trying to come in and overwhelm.
Deb?
Just one quick question. You said you'd be able to connect with, when the EMS arrives with their systems?
Yes.
Is it the same? Do they also use strikers, or is it just work well with?
I'm not sure what they use, but they're universal pad integration. So they don't have to take the pads off the patient. They're going to want to use their own system. With ALS, it's much more, complicated. But they'll be able to just plug in and go. They don't have to, wait for the patient or take them off the patient.
Deb, I think if you look at the ambulance warrant article, a lot of the gear there is Stryker. So it falls out probably.
Anybody else? Motion?
So moved.
Now can I have a motion?
Second.
Subcommittee report?
2-0.
Thank you. Welcome. So this is a motion for Article 4-2 for $32,000 for AED replacement. All of those. Let's see, Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chris Campbell.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
Mike Hardy.
Yes.
John Eiler.
Yes.
Deb McCarthy.
Yes.
Frank Monaco.
Yes.
Steve Moran.
Yes.
Rob Neufeld.
Yes.
Paul Noonan.
Yes.
Ed Parsons.
Yes.
Roger Riggs.
Yes.
And I think David Tate. David had to leave. He had a meeting he had to get to. So, thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Shawshene Schools. Shawshene ready? Yep. Thank you for waiting, too. Thanks for being patient with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Just introduce yourself, so everyone knows who you are.
So my name's Tony McIntosh. I'm the superintendent director at Shawshene. I'm joined by Jenna Lesko. She's our business manager. We also have Ms. Stacy Huberty and Mr. Kent Moffett, who are the 2 Shawshene Tech School Committee representatives for Burlington with us tonight.
Welcome, and thank you. Thanks for being patient, sticking it out.
Thank you. So good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share some highlights of the FY26 Shawshene Valley Technical High School budget with you. I already introduced myself, so I won't do that again. The Shawshene Valley Regional Vocational Technical School District Committee held a public hearing for the FY26 budget on February 25th, 2025, and voted unanimously to approve the budget that was shared with this committee. The FY26 budget incorporates a number of funding sources, including the use of excess and deficiency funds, transportation revolving funds, grant funding, and program-specific revolving funds. While we've offset the cost in the budget using a combination of approaches. We're proud to bring forward an overall budget increase for the district of $1,131,216 over our FY25 budget. A lot has happened at Shawshene Valley Technical High School since the last time we presented before this committee. In the spring of 2024, we established a salary scale for all of our administrators and established pay ranges for all of the rest of our non-union employees. This has created predictability in our salary budgeting and addressed a long-standing concern among those employees. In January of 2025, the district settled 3 collective bargaining agreements with the units represented by the Shawshene Teachers Association, the STA. These 3-year agreements are now in place for our teachers, paraprofessionals, education technology staff, and maintenance staff. Our FY26 budget includes these updated salaries, as well as salaries for all administrative and non-union employees. We currently have 2 outstanding contracts that need to be settled, our cafeteria and clerical worker groups. We've budgeted for the anticipated raises for these groups, but again, nothing will be finalized until those 2 agreements are updated. On December 13th, 2024, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA, invited Shawshene Valley Technical High School into the eligibility period. We will begin to complete Module 1, the eligibility period, beginning on August 1st, 2025, and have a deadline of on or before April 28th, 2026 to complete that phase of the MSBA process. We're excited about the opportunity that this process could potentially provide for the school, but we're also keenly aware of the impact that a project like this can have on our sending communities. We've made adjustments to the FY26 budget that focused on postponing or putting off some of the facilities and infrastructure capital projects until we have a better understanding of the scope and cost of a potential MSBA project. The FY26 budget also includes a transfer from our excess and deficiency fund into the newly established stabilization fund. Our sending communities voted to establish a stabilization fund during last year's town meeting cycle, and this will mark the first time that we've requested to put funds into that account. So that is also part of the budget proposal that's before you. As you review the budget that we've shared, please keep in mind that this budget request includes all of the costs associated with operating our school. We don't come forward and ask for additional warrant articles to fund capital projects. Everything that we need for the next year is included in this budget. We don't share building maintenance costs with our sending communities. We don't participate in any type of town level health insurance trust or anything like that. So this is the money that we need to run our school as almost its own standalone entity. Again, all of these costs are budgeted for in the FY26 budget that's been shared with you. One thing that I have been pointing out, and I want to share with this group as well, required minimum contributions to the regional district for all 5 of our sending communities increased in FY26, and that's a direct reflection of the Chapter 74 funding formula that the Department of Education uses. This equates to an additional $434,734 that our communities are required to fund based on Commonwealth of Massachusetts budget calculations. Again, this is entirely outside of the control of Shawshene Valley Technical School, but we have worked to try to keep down our overall budget increase by utilizing those additional resources that are available to us. And I will conclude with that. Ask if there's any questions.
I assume, subcommittee.
Yeah, so we appreciated the opportunity to recently speak with the administration as well as our school committee members to talk about the budget, as well as appreciate a lot of the advances that they had made, especially when it comes to salary scales, as well as, if you remember, we voted on the excessive and deficiency fund in order to help with capital projects. So that has also gone a long way in trying to move us forward in a more stable budget. So the total budget allocation is $39,959,681, with Burlington shares being $3,069,215 for the upcoming budget itself, with some offsets coming from the stabilization fund, as well as less from transportation aid and transportation receiving. So we were very enthused to see some of these. Obviously, the MSBA project looming is going to be something we're going to want to keep a close eye on. We had a very good conversation on that. They're just entering into it. For those of us that are aware of the MSBA process, but not with a regional VOTEC, if they get approved, all of the towns will have to vote together on the same day. in order to approve that, so that will be a special election in the coming years looming, if they get forward in the process, for us then to be able to vote on that ourselves. So we had asked very kindly to keep us obviously updated on the progress on the MSBA process with them, knowing that they do have the need, but also understanding the needs here in Burlington ourselves. The subcommittee voted 4-0-0 to support.
Thank you. Roger.
Quick question. So when you say all the towns have to vote at the same time, is it the residents of the town?
Residents.
So
So it's going to be Tewksbury, Wilmington, Bedford, Burlington, and Billerica will all vote together on the same day.
that's going to be a logistics nightmare.
They've done it before.
Okay.
So other regional vote techs will do it, and they have to all do it together.
I know this is a little bit off of this year's budget, but just since the MSBA project has come up, what's the approximate scope of the proposal will be, I know this is part of the first stage, but,
We haven't got to that point yet.
Okay.
That is, I think, Module 3 or Module 4, and again, we haven't even started Module 1. We won't officially start till August. I think, there's realistically two options that we're going to explore. One is a renovation expansion, and one is the potential of a new building.
okay.
Again, following some of the other regional vocational schools that are either under construction or in the funding pipeline, there's a couple of different ways we can go about that. We got a building that was built for 1,000 kids with 1,300 in it currently, and we've converted every closet, office space, everything you can think of to instructional space, and we're bumping up against capacity.
All right, thanks. I don't have any particular questions about the budget numbers specifically.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't know if this is a question for you or for Chris now. I guess the first question is, if, assuming we go forward with a new building, what year's budget do you imagine that would start to hit us?
So based on what we've reviewed, from acceptance with MSBA to construction completion is anywhere from 6 to 8 years.
Right, so when would construction start be, I guess, that's presumably when we'd really start incurring costs.
6 plus 25,
Right.
I would,
or 26.
again, I'd say probably 27, 28
Yep.
would be realistic for that. That's potentially when we
So,
would be going out for a
Couple of years from
community.
now.
Yes,
roughly.
yeah, there's still a few more things that need to be done before that.
Okay, and then I was curious about the approval process. I mean, you described a townwide vote. How many towns need to agree? All 5? So a single town could veto a project, essentially, you're saying?
So I think it's, and I'll have to look, but I think it's the majority of the vote. But one town could, let's say, vote against, and 4 can vote for, and it can still pass.
Oh, you're saying it's a total vote
Yeah, I'll look at that while we're talking.
regardless of what town they're in?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's sort of like the House of Representatives, that Billerica would have a much larger say, presumably since they have more voters. That's intriguing. All right, and then the final one with this is, what percent of it would be Burlington's obligation?
So again, that's based on enrollment, and that number's going to change. I know we had a conversation, the class of 2029, which is the students that'll enter in September, Burlington actually filled all of their spots, and we have 21 Burlington students on a wait list for next school year, which I believe is the first time ever that that's happened. But again, costs would be as part of that vote, and I don't have all the specifics, but essentially it will say that based on student enrollment.
Oh, it's not based on whatever the regional agreement is?
It is.
Essentially specifies?
Capital costs are spelled out, so it's a minimum of 10% for each community, and then once you hit the 10%, it's based on the number of students from your community that attend as a percentage of that budget.
Presumably averaged over some year or
Right,
something.
it's a moving target, and it'll change from year to year.
Okay, and then the final question overall was, there's this $9.9 million item that's fixed costs. What's included in fixed costs?
So fixed cost is health insurance, utilities, retirement, chime in busing, transportation. So that is essentially all of the non-staffing, non-supplies and materials pieces kind of fall into that.
I think we call it accommodated.
Kind of, yeah.
And it is broken out in here.
It's a different mix of things, but yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Snow removal, all those fun things.
Steve?
So with the 21 additional students, that brings us into what, 140, 150?
So, that's a great question. Give me 1 second, because I actually brought that, because I had anticipated that question.
So this is,
So currently, right now, and again, I have the February numbers, so these might be a little out of date. We have 117 Burlington students at Shawshene. 29 seniors are going to graduate this year, and we accepted 57 Burlington students for the freshman class. So we're going to have a net gain of,
20-something.
yeah, about 25 kids, 26 kids. So Burlington's enrollment numbers are definitely increasing.
And so you did say that you were focusing some of the capital projects with the intent, the MSBA coming. But can you talk a little bit about the locker room upgrade that's taking place? And the money that's allocated towards that?
The locker
Is
room.
that the field house?
Oh, yeah, the field house.
Yes, so that is, if you've ever been to our facility, there's the bleachers, and then when that football field was originally put in, there is like, I think, 2 or 3 public bathrooms there. And the town of Billerica has been courteous with us and allowed us to build additional facilities over time. So that money in there is to buy fixtures, toilets, sinks, petition walls, and finish that out so that we can open those additional bathroom spaces.
Okay, so it's external to the building?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The extra students that applied this year is sort of unusual. You said it's the first time you've ever had like an excess. What is there anything you attribute that to?
I mean, I will give props to Superintendent Conti. He has been very good about partnering with us. We've actually started the last 2 years where we bus all the Burlington 8th graders over during the school day. They get to see what we do, how we do it, what the shop spaces are. We've done some intentional things. We've brought in an initiative called Career Trees, which kind of helps kids and families envision, what's an entry-level position, what's a kind of a technical career, what's a professional career that relates to all our shops. So I think it's a combination of getting the kids over there and seeing what we do and how we do it, and it's also getting that information out for parents and families so that they're making informed decisions.
So it's like a recruiting effort
Yeah.
almost, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so again, a class of 27, we had 40 Burlington applications. Class of 28, we had 55. Class of 29, it jumped to 81. So it's definitely, this was definitely a significant increase.
Okay, thank you.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking at the enrollment graphs, and it's a little hard to be sure, but Bedford's a small number, but their enrollments went up quite a bit, 2021, 2022, and it stayed up pretty high, but it's still a small number. Billerica's has come down quite a bit from its peak, and it's kind of level for the past 3 years, even down.
you had a new high school.
They built a new school.
Yeah.
Okay, and Burlington's is kind of level, but actually, so it went down in 2025 from 24, but you're going to come back up to 140 maybe, so it's kind of level. And Tewksbury's kind of level, so I guess what I'm wondering, and actually Wilmington went up a lot in the last 3 years, I'm kind of wondering with this new school, are you going to build a school for a significantly larger enrollment than what the one that exists today was built for? What enrollment level are you looking at?
So again, that's part of this eligibility period that we're gonna embark on over the summer. So there is an online enrollment projection platform that MSBA requires you to use. And again, it'll take all 5 of the towns in our catchment area, it'll project out, you know, how many 8th graders are gonna be 5 years from now, how many 8th graders are gonna be 10 years from now, how many 8th graders are gonna be from 15 years from now. And MSBA will come back and give us a range and say, we'll fund a building between X number of students and X number of students. And then again, it's the building committee, it's going out and having conversations with our sending communities about, you know, what they're gonna support and what they're comfortable with. The last thing, you know, I wanna do is, I have no intention of flipping this thing upside down. We can't support 2,000 kids. We can't support probably 1,700 kids. So, I mean, there's a range based on our staffing levels, the programs we offer, the things that we do. So trying to find that sweet spot somewhere in the middle there.
Even if you had floor space, there's other costs. You could only support so many
Right.
programs.
You think about the equipment that goes into some of those
Right.
programs and the capital costs that are associated with them, and then staffing. You know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not easy to find a carpentry teacher or a plumbing teacher.
It does look like the VOC enrollments are kind of level, with the big outlier is Wilmington's gone up a lot.
Yep.
And Bill Rickers, and I don't know why a new high school would account for fewer students from Bill Ricker going to the tech.
When Bill Ricker built that high school, they actually included the 8th graders there. So there was kind of a trend there for a few years because the 8th graders were already settled in at the high school.
Oh, and that's changing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so again, I think that had impacted those numbers. It seems like it's kind of leveled off now, and whatever impact that had is kind of waned in the.
So this all plays into, in like a couple of years, you'll finally have an agreement with MSBA on how big a building you're going to build, how much assistance you're going to get, and kind of a through line of roughly what the cost of the building will be.
Yep.
Whether it's a new or a reno, and then we'll find out what our assessment is.
Yep.
So you're saying we really can't, I'd say it's about 2 or 3 years away when it would start to see that, but we really can't guess at what that number might be at this point.
Big.
I don't want to guess at the
I
number.
bet John's guessing.
I can tell you what some similar projects have come in at. So Northeast, which is in Wakefield,
Yes.
which is a bigger building, a bigger school than I think what we're going to be looking at, was about $325 million. Tri-County in Franklin, which is being built for 1,000 kids, I think was 282.
Do those numbers include things like athletic fields and swimming pools and
Yeah, site work and, yeah.
whole enchilada?
So there's some things MSBA won't reimburse for, so they won't pay for pools. There's certain things that they exclude, and again, then that plays into that percentage, that reimbursement percentage based on what you want to add to a facility.
And are you looking to renovate the pool in this project, even if it's on your nickel?
That's a conversation for our sending communities. I know a lot of them, and I think Burlington is one of them, they utilize the pool for their swim teams and their dive teams and stuff like that, so that's definitely got to be part of the conversation. You know, if that's a resource that the communities want to continue to have, then we have to talk about what it's going to cost.
So is that conversation at the school committee level, or how does Burlington weigh in on whether they're for or against?
So we have to establish a building committee for MSBA that's part of this first phase of this. And I've already had conversations with the town managers and other people because we want to build in representation in all 5 of our
So-
communities.
So we'll be needing to put members on this committee, John? On the,
Yeah, I think when they talked about building the committee, they wanted representation from each of the towns, so I think that's their plan.
Yeah. And then again, so MSBA will come back, and again, this is a couple of phases down the road here. They'll come back with some preferred schematics. Usually they come up with a dozen or 15 variations. And then, again, that goes to the building committee reviews it, then it goes
Okay.
out to the sending
but the
communities.
point is Burlington would have some membership on the
Yeah, absolutely.
building committee.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's what we want to figure out. I think you want to have, like, it's different, like, so if you look at like the high school or Fox Hill or one of those, like, you're pulling from just your own community. But I think that's the thing about a regional school, you have to, like, that's something we'll have to figure out. Maybe that's from talking to other towns too, that'll be part of the project to figure out what's the best balance, because you have to have, like, you don't want too many members, but you want enough to make an impact. But you have to basically remember that you're also sharing it with 5 other towns. people, the right number of representation. I think that's something you'll have to figure out. And some of that will be done through research to make sure, Burlington's represented, Billerica's represented, like everybody has the right number of people and the appropriate.
Okay,
I would-
thank you.
I would guess somebody at least related to schools and maybe somebody related to finance.
I don't know. I really don't know, yeah.
Chris?
Sounds like Frank was offering to volunteer for that.
I'm all in favor of pool, do football field,
So
extra
just
space,
so in looking
robotics
at
lab.
what some of the regional towns did when they were looking at vote text, so yes, it does look like it is a majority vote of the districts. That being said, the financing gets very interesting, because what we're looking at is if it is an MSBA project, so then we are looking at less the MSBA costs, then less our share. So while it may sound like a large number, we then take out the MSBA costs and then take out what our proportionate share is. So this is something that some of the districts, depending on where their levies are at, didn't have to actually do a vote override, but just voted either through town meeting or voted through certain appropriations to be able to incorporate that, because it ends up being a final bill of 30 million or, roughly, whatever, just throwing out random numbers. It's not going to necessarily be that whole number that it starts at. And so, when thinking of Burlington High School, we're looking at tax levy of 1,100 to 1,200 per tax. We're not necessarily looking at that, again, we don't know where tariffs and steel and what it's going to be 2 years from now, but thinking of all of those steps, and I know there's other committee members that can do that math much faster than I can, but it'll be a proportionate share on that, and then want to figure out, is this something that we go through town meeting on, or is this something we need to go to the voters on? Ultimately, I think it needs a town vote in the end, because even ones that went through town meeting for funding sources still voted on it, but I think there's just more information to come.
Right, if you take,
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, just, if it was 330 and we got 1/3 for SBA, and we're at 10% currently on the capital contributions, that's like 22 million is what that suggests.
plus head count.
But plus extras. But yeah, obviously town meeting would have to vote on the bonding of this, so it seems, what if we get in the awkward situation of, it passes to town votes, but town meeting doesn't agree to fund the bonding? Do we have any sense of what happens then, or?
I think you're looking too far ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess we
I
do
like to
town
plan
meeting
for
first,
disaster.
town meeting first, and then vote. We do the funding, then the
Right.
actual vote itself.
There's a lot to discuss there, because it also might require a debt exclusion vote.
Yeah.
So what happens? So
Yeah.
let's get back to this year's budget request.
Got a little far.
Any more questions? Do we have questions on FY26 budget?
Can you just talk a little bit through the changes in the nursing department for the 30% increase?
So there's two, and thank you, Steve. There's two factors that kind of play into that. So when we came forward with our FY25 budget, we had 2 school nurses and a paraprofessional, an LPN that was assigned to that office. And again, the budget got approved. As we moved into that, we figured out that it was kind of difficult to replace the LPN. So what we did, again, we had some cost savings in some of our hiring. We decided to bring on a 3rd full-time nurse. What we found out as we were going through this process, we didn't carry through the paraprofessional as a separate line item. So it looks like all of that money got collapsed into the other one. So there is some adjustment there. The other thing that the FY26 budget includes, it wasn't in 25, for 55 years, the nurses had a separate pay scale for whatever reason. This last contract negotiation, one of the items that was negotiated with the STA was to move the nurses onto the teacher's pay scale. So there is also some adjustments to salaries. They didn't line up perfectly, so all 3 of our nurses also got a little bit of a bump to move from the old nurses scale to this one. So that's why that looks like it's so far out of whack.
Okay, thanks.
Roger?
Not so much as a budget thing, but an observation. I noticed that in your budget document, you actually name all the teachers and their salaries I know a couple of towns, including Burlington, have gotten away from naming individual names just in consideration of various privacy issues, et cetera. But
I just-
up to every,
Point of information, all of our teacher names are in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, there,
Yeah,
it's public information.
It is, yeah.
they're in there.
maybe only the town did it the other way.
Yeah.
It's the
It's
town.
in the,
that
it's
does
the
it.
Police and
superintendent's
fire,
budget
no.
that we review, but it's not distributed at town meeting. You can ask for it.
All right, anyway,
We have some of our sending communities that request that on an annual basis, so
Yes.
we just started putting it in.
okay, anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for details, a good explanation.
Steve?
With the, just one last question about the community funding formula. Is that going to put us, with the additional students, is that going to put us into that budget where we're going to have to pay additional on top of, like, we have that 10%? Is that going to kick us up the next year?
It could potentially. I mean, if Burlington's enrollment increases to a point where it's a minimum of 10.
Right.
And once you go over the 10, it's directly proportionate to the number of students that attend.
Right, okay. So,
And, you know, historically, we haven't always hit that minimum, which is, this is a different banner year. So that's why we had that conversation of, you know, if this continues to trend. We also did talk about if we wanted to reallocate the numbers per the 5 sending districts, but then that could create an additional headache of we may lose spots too. So I did bring that back to the school committee and Eric Conti to be able to think about, but that it would be a concern if they were to reallocate numbers, if we were to lose numbers as well.
thank you.
All right.
Motion to approve?
Second?
So, motion to approve $3,069,215. Is that correct?
Yep. That's it.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Rob Noonan?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
And David Tate. Oh, David Tate's not with us anymore.
He's gone.
That sounds more permanent than it is.
I'll tell him.
1300, chair votes yes, 1300. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah.
For your continued support.
Yeah, good luck with that
Thanks for your
SBA.
success.
It's gonna be a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's going to go easy.
All right. Negotiated settlements. Budget 900.
All right, so we're going to bring our chief negotiator up. He's going to tell you everything you want to know about it. David left because he was afraid of what was going to
And you're
ensue.
in charge. I will not forget this subcommittee report.
Well, it's a 2-0-0 vote. John, take it away, okay?
So negotiated settlements, I think everybody here definitely knows, but for the thousands watching at home, is where we budget for the money that hasn't been distributed to each department for a contract that hasn't been settled. Going into next year, we don't have any settled contracts, so the number in there is quite large, but it's for every single one of our employees on the town side, 350-ish people that have not been distributed to the contracts. As we settle the contracts, we will distribute to each of the departments their allotment for each of the contracts. For those that don't know, we have 5 collective bargaining units on the town side. We have one for the DPW workers, we have one for police patrol, one for police command, one for fire, and one that's called BMEA. That's sort of the catch-all. That's all union employees that don't belong to one of those groups. So it consists of quite an eclectic group from clerical staff, custodians, engineers, inspectors, social workers, things like that. So that's our biggest unit. And then we also have our AMP unit, which isn't technically a union, but they do collectively bargain their pay scale. So you can see that the budget request for this year is 1.1 million. Again, pretty large number. And looks like a massive increase because it will say that the budget for last year was
$39,000, but that's just what was left over after we transferred everything out to each of the departments for the settled agreements that we had. So what does this 1.1 million do? This covers us for, again, a settlement with all 5 of those units plus our A&P folks at a rate that is consistent with what is in the market right now. We're currently in negotiations with everybody, so I'm purposely being vague on what that number is. But that's sort of the report. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Deb?
I just had a quick question. So how often are the unions, how long are the contracts?
Contracts are typically 3 years for all 5 of the collective bargaining units. So the school bargaining units are in year 1 of 3-year agreements. So they were in the same boat last year.
Frank?
I think just, I will be brief, I promise. As a way of sort of calibrating things, right? All of the municipal department budgets that have open contracts don't have the increases that will come up when the bargaining unit settles, right? But all of the money that would take to do that is in the negotiated settlements, which is in the operating budget. So from a total budget point of view, you can compare the school department to all the other departments and get an apples to apples. In the school department, I don't believe, and maybe you can clarify, they're carrying a negotiated settlements. They've built it in already as in the salary lines.
He just said they're already in year 1.
Right, so when you look at the school budget and you see their increases, that's got all the salary increases in it.
I don't think they have any open ones at the moment.
Okay,
They're all
so it still
settled.
makes it a true statement, just so you can be clear on that. So sometimes we'll see some department budgets a little looking kind of easy, not so high, but when you when you prorate in the negotiated settlements piece into that budget, you then get a truer picture on a department basis of what it's running at. So we got our bottom line right. We're not quite sure of the distribution on the municipal side, right? That's something that's always kind of, I found a little, like it's hard to really compare, but that's how you have to do it.
Yeah, and to add to that, when we meet with each of the departments in a situation like this where there is an agreement in there and they come in and they're bragging about being at a 2% increase when the guideline was 4.5%.
Right.
We factor in what it would be if we had a potential settlement, and then we hold their feet to the fire and say, well, you're not really doing a great job here. So when the police and fire both came in and talked about their 0.25 increases.
Right, which is exactly.
When you add that in, they're still well under, but.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, mentally, I've been adding like 2.5%, 3% to those
However you
numbers,
wanna
to
do it,
those salary
it's just
items, just to keep my head in the right
Yeah,
space.
it makes it a little bit harder to actually be sure of
Yeah.
how is this department staying in guidelines versus another one, and what are their needs?
Right.
Other questions? How confident are you? How many do you think you'll have settled?
We will have at least 2 before
Yeah.
the meeting. So when we're going through the warrant articles, hopefully we'll have them all, but we'll have at least 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so the subcommittees might have to meet to vote on whichever ones are ready before town meeting.
Each one of them has a placeholder article.
Yeah.
To fund each one of them.
Okay.
Maybe optimistic, but.
Motion to approve?
Second?
So, motion to approve $1,100,000. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld? Paul Noonan?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, 13-0-0. Thank you. Now, this next one's not a vote, I don't believe, but we do have a free cash discussion.
Was I missing something about?
I assume special ed is
I'm
being
sorry.
delayed, or?
Special, sorry, I
You want me
skipped
to
right over it.
give an update?
Sure.
Is it
So
delayed or not?
the school committee didn't vote on the budget until last night. and actually pretty late last night. I think it was like 9:45 after they ended budget discussion, and so wanted to wait until there was actually the school committee budget in order to then meet and vote on that. So we're not meeting on that until 6:30 next Wednesday, right before this, where we will talk about both the high school budget, the school budget, excuse me, and the special education accommodated budget together. So we did do a vote on the special education accommodated budget, but it didn't make sense to have them come back both twice. I also personally had some specific questions I wanted to talk about with the director of special education that couldn't be discussed in a public forum, that I just wanted to talk about prior to that. So because of that nature, we'll be doing those next Wednesday. And then on 4/28, we're going to be meeting for the school warrant articles at 4 o'clock. And then we'll be presenting those on 4:30 to meet the calendar expectations there.
So, sorry about that, I skipped right over it because I'd already graded out on my list. Now, free cash discussion.
So I could start, Mr. Chairman. So every year, after we set the articles that are moving forward to town meeting, we meet with Town Hall 1.
Sean, everybody got this handout? This has a fresh update on it, so there you go. Look at that.
For those of you using the online version, it's on there too, the update's on there too. So we meet with Town Hall 1 and we go over articles that are potentially to use for free cash, which is always our pay-as-you-go capital article, which for the last several years has been around $6 million. That's the same this year. You'll see when you go over the warrant articles that the free cash use in Article 4 is just over $6 million. And then there were a couple others that we talked about, which made sense to try to use to keep them off the debt schedule, which is our goal all the time. And then there's a couple on there that are traditionally free cash, like the 4th of July parade, if that moves forward, and then the school community use custodial fee that is traditionally on there to cover the cost of when certain groups use school buildings and we need to pay a custodian. We fund it from there. The other three that are on there are, we'll call them mid-sized projects that we think are a good use of free cash. One is a sewer vector. That's, I think Brian has talked about it before. That's the big machine that sucks out the sewer system or, a drain. These are big machines that last 20 years. They cost a lot of money. It's at the end of its life, but we can still limp along another year till we can order one, because I'm sure it's going to take more than a year to get one, but we just couldn't put this one off anymore. The next one is a water meter replacement program. If for those of you using the online version with the backup, you may have seen the amounts change and the backup change. This is basically to replace all the meters in town, and we vacillated between doing it all, asking for the money all at once and getting the authorization to borrow it, which is it's about a $4 or $5 million project. But we couldn't do all that work in 1 year anyway. So the other option was to ask for it piecemeal, and that would give us an option to maybe not do every single meter if we didn't need to. And that's where we came down on, was to ask for about a year's worth of work that we can do, which is about $1 million, and then to give us a good idea of how far that gets us. We looked at what are the economies were of ordering them all, or doing the big project, approving it all at once, getting one vendor on board, getting one price set. There's definitely would be some savings, but maybe just not enough to, with a little bit of the unknown of how big that project really needs to be moving forward at that level. So we settled on asking for 1 year's worth of free cash, which is $1 million. And then the last one is every other year, we ask for $1.1 million to do water system upgrades, replacing water mains and the like. Then the following year, we do $3.5 million for roads. So we call it the water bond and the road bond. The last few times this $1.5 million has come up, we've kept it off of the debt schedule and used free cash to do that, and we're asking to do, or recommending that we do the same this year. So that would be would be spending about 9.4 million at the Maytown meeting. You can see on the report, when free cash was certified last fall, it was just over 36 million. We talked about it in January, that that was about the goal we had, because we had a plan to use some of that for the Fox Hill and the police station. And then we also made the decision at that time to keep two projects that we had approved last May to be borrowing, to keep them off the debt schedule and use free cash for those. And that was the road bond from last May and Overlook Park, the town's portion of that project. You may remember we got a grant for $1 million, and that was a $2.3 million project. So we used what is a larger than usual number in January, but that was because that was our plan. And this is probably a smaller number than we typically use in May, but again, because we used it in January. That $10 million is about our goal. We think that's a good number to carry over. Gives us the flexibility we need and a good cushion going into next year of unspent free cash. Any free cash that is generated through operations this year would be then added to a nice base of $10 million.
Questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the, on the website, you have the 5-year request, non-school, not final draft here, it says. Is that collection of things in the backup, does that add up to?
If you go to the one that's the warrant articles, not on the department budget pages, but the page that lists all the warrant articles,
Lists all the warrant articles.
then it will have each warrant article and,
Okay, so that's,
Mark that other thing as being obsolete.
yeah, I can just take that off now.
All right, so we should not look at that other one anymore. We should now use this
Yeah.
one.
And now each warrant article has its specific,
And that will add up to these numbers.
correct.
So as we go into subcommittee meetings, if there's anything that isn't on this list, we know they're pulling a fast one on us.
Yeah,
All right.
and they may have, if anybody's met with their subcommittee already, they may have already talked about projects that were in the mix to make the cut for this May. I know that has happened with the capital committee. There's been projects that they've certainly talked about with a lot of departments that are just being deferred.
All right. And so presumably all departments are aware of
Yeah.
ones that you think are on the list. Okay, good, thank you.
Other questions? Frank?
So, as you said, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing to vote on here, right? You're going to
Right.
vote on each warrant article, and these are the numbers that we think we'll put, these are the articles that we think we will put against free cash and what it'll add up to. We always run into this little problem, well, we seem to more frequently run into this little problem that some town meeting members think that, we should just be using more of the free cash, or why don't we just do more? So this is very intentional, that I happen to agree with it. The rollover here of about 10 million, I can think of a half a dozen things that we could do with that 10 million out another fiscal year, every one of which will avoid interest payments. And from my point of view, the debt schedule is going to get pretty hefty, and the overall cost of it is really affected by how long you pay interest and how much it is. So using free cash to knock that down is a really smart thing to do, but you got to have enough free cash to do it. This strikes me as a good number to roll over, because we are knocking down quite a few things that we do want to get out of the way. So that's what the blend is reflected by Town Hall 1 and the recommendation of these guys. We actually added one item to this tonight, which was the water system upgrade, $1.5 million.
Each year, we look at every article and its funding source and see, does it make sense to do? So we're going to wind up with 4 articles that we're borrowing for, or that will go to town meeting as a borrow. And they're just, we talked about each of them and why it made sense to keep them as borrowing for now. And, as Frank said, we could spend that $10 million. Bob Cuna, Brendan Egan, or Brian White could spend that $10 million today, no problem, on stuff that's worthwhile.
Right, but the motivation for that is to deduct the interest if you can.
Sure.
It really helps out, right?
Yeah.
So, and I guess if you don't mind my sharing what you're kind of speculating, some of the municipal interest rates will come in at.
No, yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like in very recent history, some communities have been getting 4% after all the coupon discounts are done and whatnot. The true cost is running in the 4% area. It's really hard to know what's going to happen 2, 3, 4 years out.
Treasury's just at 5%.
Yeah, so who the hell knows? But the point is, 4% on up is high enough that it really pays to not pay interest.
Sure.
If you can avoid it. So, thank you.
Roger.
We'd already talked to Brian about many of the DPW things. I somehow was thinking that the sewer vector would come out of the sewer enterprise fund.
There's a sewer vector piece that's a kind of a tow-behind machine. It's not the all-one truck piece. That's about $40,000.
Right.
That's going to come out of the sewer enterprise
Okay,
fund.
but the big number, there isn't enough money in the sewer enterprise fund?
It would eat more than half of the retained earnings, so
Okay,
maybe not a
that's-
great
I mean,
idea.
that was the kind of the implied question, is obviously we don't want to
Yeah.
deplete the sewer enterprise.
If we ended up borrowing that, it would probably make sense to pay the debt out of the sewer enterprise. But if we paid cash for it, it would, like I said, it would
Okay,
eat up
that's
half
good.
of the retained earnings.
And we had, he didn't have a good answer about the water meter replacement program when we talked to him, because it was the all or some question.
Yeah.
And so I guess you settled that from the financial end of things for him. So, okay, thanks.
I think as we look at this, we should also kind of think back, because it feels like at the end of Maytown meeting, the last 2 years at least, maybe 3, we felt like we probably should have been a little tougher on some of these warrant article requests that were under free cash. Sometimes we treat it like it's a gift card, and they're going to be like, oh, we get to spend this. And so I think that we need to just be aware before we start talking about warrant articles, everybody really think through it, and is this something that fits with what we've been trying to do? Because, again, anything we save from that, if we don't spend it, can also serve. So,
To reinforce that, if there's something that is just nice to do and everybody thinks, well, we got the money, what the hell, let's just do it. The point is, if you took $3 million or $4 million bucks, and instead of just doing it, you actually applied it to a bond and brought the principal down, you're getting about a 40% tailwind out of that. So it's really stupid to just blow free cash when you could apply it to a bond more meaningfully. It's just bad economics.
so, yeah, I just want to, let's just have a mindset that just because we
Right.
put this much money aside for free cash doesn't mean that, oh,
We've got some pretty good ideas what we're going to use it for.
yeah, right.
It was clearly
Anything else?
sewer factor.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Yep, and so one thing about us, if we can get some buy-in, again, not tonight, it wasn't on for a vote, but before when we print the warrant, all these articles are going to have 3 possible funding sources, and it sometimes confuses everybody because it says we'll raise and appropriate, borrow, transfer from other funds, the way you have to do a warrant to give yourself the flexibility, unless you know what the funding source is going to be. So if we know we're going to do some of them from free cash, we can change that in the warrant and not have to fix it in the motion. It's not a big deal
Oh, I
at all,
see.
but it's less confusing for some folks, I think.
Rather than that, when he moves it to the floor to specify it.
Yeah, so he can say, as printed in the warrant, and the
Yeah.
funding source is free cash, rather than the motion is this, and the funding source is free cash. It's a piece of cake, but it does
So when we
confuse some
vote the
people.
individual warrant articles, we should make a point of voting the particular source?
The funding source.
If we can.
But it's still, that won't make it in the printed warrant.
Yeah, so I think if you,
So are you
if it's
asking?
something, if you could do it next Wednesday, if it's something that the board wants, the committee wants to entertain, then,
Could we do it now?
I mean, it's on the agenda. It
Yeah.
didn't say we weren't voting. We can
Yeah,
do it now. if
we know everything we're going to know.
Yeah, we'd be voting for identifying the funding source for these articles, not necessarily voting on the article.
Right.
I think we could do that right now. I make a motion to approve the use of free cash for the listed articles, 4, 9, 11, 12, 23, and 24.
Well, just, we're not approving the use of free cash, we're approving specifying that as the funding source if it passes.
Well, yeah, okay.
A little different.
Yeah, I would.
Clarification before.
6.5 dozen.
Chris, real quick,
Otherwise, we're actually
John,
voting the
is
spend
this
it.
relatively in line with what we've done in the past years? My recollection is it's relatively in line.
Yeah, it may be a little off because we had planned that carryover more.
Yeah, but that's, sorry, I just wanted to, before we get there.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Good with that?
Yeah.
Everybody's good with that? All right.
What's the exact thing we're voting on?
We're voting on identifying free cash as the funding source for Articles 4, 9, 11, 12, 23, and 24
Okay.
without voting on we're not voting to approve them. We're voting to assign free cash as their funding mechanism.
Okay.
All right. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Newfeld?
Yes.
Paul Noonan?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Could you just
12
post
zero.
this latest one on the website?
It's on there.
It is
Just
now?
did it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Wow, and I
And fix it.
downloaded it this morning, it's already wrong.
There's a typo.
I got no
Thank you.
In replacements,
in replacements, got it.
Article 12,
Yeah,
It says red.
That's the
I'll fix the typo and get the new one up there.
Minutes are listed in the agenda, but I didn't get feedback from anybody, so let's postpone that just in case, to make sure you got them. I
I don't know, did you, when did you send them?
late Monday night, maybe Tuesday night, but I think it was late Monday night. That's usually when I get them.
Not sure I saw them.
Okay, I'll send them out. I'll make sure.
All right,
I did it through.
I may have just missed the attachment, though.
It's likely me. It's likely my fault. All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
second.